When growing up, we were out probably from dawn to dusk playing football. And then as we progressed through the years and got to school, we ended up in places like this, Mollusk playing fields, where we played on a Saturday and on a weeknight to our heart's content, playing football, honing our skills, hoping to be the next Geordie Best or Norman Whiteside. Definitely not academic. I put all my activities into sport, whether it be basketball, table tennis, anything that basically involved chasing a ball, kicking a ball, and unfortunately the academic side of things fell to the wayside. There was probably around 14 or 15 of us that grew up together in the late 70s, 80s. The thought would be that we'd walk into sort of apprenticeships or the shipyard and things like that. Coming out of school, those engineering opportunities weren't there. We went on to various schemes and that there, and most of them didn't equate to anything. So I was fortunate in a way that I did become an electrician and serve my time. Worked in the shipyard for a couple of years. I was very proud of my time there, to be honest. I left the shipyard in the late 80s, went into Citybus and worked up there on the Falls Engineering in Citybus. And as somebody from that area, they used to ask you, did you go home for your lunch? That's how they basically found out whether you were a local or not. So when you answered no, I don't actually, they knew where you were from, but you were accepted as a good friend, and I have many friends going back to that time through some of the worst of the troubles. When I moved up into Mollusk, there was an ongoing campaign against the landfill site. Government paid more heed to a group of people presenting themselves. We were all individuals approaching government bodies and approaching the owners. So we banded together as a group, and Mollusk Community Action Group was born, and we went in to negotiate on behalf of the community and did get improvements, but it wasn't overnight, it was over a period of time. Through time, the Mollusk Community Action Group has evolved, and we have enhanced, I feel, our village, and we've grown. We have encompassed other groups within the area. In the early 2000s, we became aware that there was a possibility of an incinerator being sited in Mollusk, and the reasons around it were basically it was picked because of its proximity to the Cottonmount landfill site. So ARC21 are the body that's behind the planning application. They represent the waste management of 6 constituent councils in Northern Ireland, basically the east side of Northern Ireland. They, in their wisdom, think a 300,000 incinerator is how you deal with waste in the 21st century. So we formed an alliance, and that alliance would be No ARC21 to stop the Hightown incinerator going ahead. And we're based on many other community groups within the area, and that's from Mayfield, North Belfast, South Antrim, Glengormley, etc. At 2.5 billion, it'll be the biggest project, public sector awarded contract in the history of Northern Ireland. The ratepayers of Northern Ireland will be paying for that for 35 years. The civil servant, in the absence of a minister, took the decision on a planning application which had regional significance. We challenged that in the courts, and the courts sided with us. Not only one judge, but 3 judges in the Court of Appeal in Belfast sided with us. So we have the backing of 4 judges who concurred with us that the permanent secretary was incorrect. The Buick ruling is a wee bit embarrassing for me because of obviously taking my surname. There's a story regarding it where through work I found myself in Cork on the day I was expected to be signing the papers off that we were going to court. So within 15 minutes of the deadline, it could have very easily become the Thompson ruling, as my vice chairman of the group was standing by ready to sign the papers. But I was able to make the dash from Cork to Belfast on the day, and so yes, it's become the Buick ruling. I believe on day one, when I make a decision that what I think is right, I stick by that decision and I see it out, basically. So, as I say, the motto of our group is the fight goes on, and until the incinerator is consigned to the past or history, our fight will go on. So it's instilled in me probably from an early age to fight for what you believe in. And I think throughout our group and throughout the community, we've all adopted that.
I'm 28. I've lived in this area for 28 years, and I've never more felt a part of it as I do now, because the people that I've met aren't just acquaintances, like they're friends. And it's lovely to know that should something happen in this area again, we're going to be like on it, I would hope, pretty quick. In this case, you actually had a public water authority whose their sole purpose is to keep clean and safe drinking water for the people of Northern Ireland. And they actually leased out land to an oil and gas company without a public consultation, without planning permission. And the oil and gas companies, they may be known for many things, but they're certainly not known to want to keep water safe and drinkable for people. All these trees were planted on land that was taken to build a sort of safe water catchment area over 100 years ago for Belfast, Carrickfergus, Whitehead and surrounding areas. Lots of people love it and use it. Horse riders and bikers and walkers and people that just want to come up on a Sunday stroll or whatever. To be honest, we thought there's no way that this is going to happen, because no public authority is going to actually hand over land to an oil and gas company to drill on. We went around door to door and we told people that there was a possibility that somewhere in this area was going to be a site for exploratory oil or gas, potentially fracking. On a Friday, people got letters delivered around this area to say the company will be moving in on Monday. Me and my mum had decided we were going to be there for 8 o'clock in the morning, driving around the corner, just heart racing, thinking like, will anybody be there? Or will it just be me and my mum? And I'll never forget seeing all these cars parked up. There was a tractor there blocking the gates, and there was a big banner there, and there was people there that I had never met before. Yeah, it was an amazing start. And what was wonderful was that there was just people that had never ever got involved in this type of thing before. So we had people that just had decided that this was a big enough threat to the place that they love, and they were going to take a stand to say that they just didn't think that this was right. For me, one of the best things about the campaign, that coming together of people, that it didn't matter where they were from, what they believed in, what their background was. There was people camping. So everybody was down at the camp, and there was, a barbecue going, there was tea being made continuously. People sat round, we got to know each other, got to make friends with people. Nature seemed to be on our side, and when they drilled, they didn't find what they expected to find. The reason that this company were able to do it in this way was that they did it under permitted development rights, PDR, which means that you don't apply for planning permission. You just get sort of by default permission to do this. One of the major wins and a really important thing out of this was that now we're going to get the law changed to say that oil, gas and mineral extraction is no longer allowed without planning permission. For people that got involved in this, it was about seeing what it's actually like when these things happen in your own backyard, and knowing that although when it happens in other places it seems comfortably far off, but when it's here and when it's now and when you're seeing it in front of you, sometimes there's just that push that you just cannot stand by and let these things happen.
I've lived in East Antrim for most of my life. I grew up in Whitehead, which is about 6 miles down the road, and know and love this area. It's so beautiful and can be so peaceful. I've always loved nature, been very aware of it from a very young age. My father encouraged me to know the names of wildflowers and birds. Over the years, I became aware of how lovely my environment was. In 1994, Larnloch and the places I love came under threat from the proposal to make Macromorn Quarry a landfill site. Macromorn Quarry was created by the cement works, Blue Circle Cement Works, in the early 1900s. When I was a young child and I used to come down in the car with my dad, every time we drove past Macromorn, he would say, "There's that blasted chimney pouring out the dust," which would, if the wind was blowing in the right direction, blow to Whitehead, cover the car and the washing in cement dust, and he didn't like that much. There's a tradition in Northern Ireland of filling holes in the ground with rubbish, and this was the biggest hole in Ireland, so it was going to hold a lot of rubbish. The councils in Northern Ireland were looking for somewhere to dump their waste, and at the time there wasn't a waste strategy for Northern Ireland. So Blue Circle first entered the planning application, and then Hall Waste came on board, a big English waste company. It's such a beautiful part of the world. How could we allow them to do this? And whatever they put into the big hole, even though they were going to line it, it would always leak, and this leachate, the poisonous substances, were going to leak into Larnloch. It was obvious that this had to be stopped. There was a meeting called about what was going to be done about this, so I went along to the meeting, and that was the start. I was just a mum with 2 young children, but we knew we were doing the right things. We formed a committee, and there were about 9 of us. First of all, we had to get hold of the environmental statement, which was a book that deep, and read through that on topics that we knew nothing about, but we soon learnt. We were guided by Friends of the Earth and a legal firm, Cleaver, Fulton and Rankin. Larne Borough Council gave us £36,000, and that helped greatly, and we ran all sorts of fundraising things. We raised £78,000. I can't believe that we raised that amount of money in those days. Larnloch has got 3 international designations: a Birds Directive, a Habitat Directive and a Ramsar site. So, and it's a special protection area. This place is important not just to us locals, but is important internationally. And we didn't feel that the DOE were really protecting it. They weren't going to stop the leachate from leaking into it. 0.9 of a cubic metre would be leaching into Larnloch. Well, we didn't know what 0.9 of a cubic metre looked like, and I said to one of the committee, what size is that? He says, "Oh well, that's so many oil drums, about 18 oil drums." Toxic leachate signs made up, and pasted these in the barrels, and we made a wall out of them in front of the leisure centre for the first day of the public inquiry. The day of the result, on the 12 o'clock news, it was announced that the dump had been stopped because of the roseate terns on Blue Circle Island. So it was a joyous day, much popping of champagne corks after 2 years of hard work. HBO saw the quarry, thought it was a great site, and have built Castle Black there, and there are now thousands of tourists coming to East Antrim to see one of the sites where Game of Thrones is filmed. Now, if somewhere that you love is being threatened by a big company and you feel that you're only a small person and what do you know, but go for it. If you think it's right to fight, do it.
I spent the summers in my youth going up Carmoney Hill and spending hours there and taking picnics up with our friends. When I grew up, I decided that I didn't want to move too far away just because I loved the area. I learnt about nature, about the different trees, about the wildlife that we have so close to our home, and I just thought I didn't want my children to miss out on that. The pig farm is a huge, massive factory that's going to contain thousands of pigs who are going to be just basically kept in a confined space. Most of them will go to China. The pig farm development is going to have an impact for me personally with my son Logan, who's the youngest of my children. He has chronic lung condition, and he also is on the autistic spectrum and has sensory processing disorder. On walking Logan to school, when he used to go to the primary school, he would have vomited on the way to school because the senses were just overloaded with the smell from the smaller pig farm, which is below this one. And considering how much more slurry is going to be needed to be spread out in fields surrounding my home, I would be concerned about that. I think sometimes people think that we're like really anti-farming. That's not what it's about for me. I mean, I am aware that most farms nowadays, the animals aren't out in the fields and they're not running about like what we thought they were years ago. I think it's best to be open, and my children from a young age just decided that eating meat wasn't for them. I still have one meat eater out of my 3, but the girls have just decided it's not a lifestyle that they want to buy into. I became aware of planning that had been put in when we received notification through our letterbox, and that was when I started to take an interest in it. I did object to the planning. Lots of our local politicians were actually on the planning permission on the council. I have emailed them and approached them, and really to me it was a done deal before it even got as far as that. They had all made their minds up. They're very reluctant to even listen to any voice that doesn't want to support the pig factory. I think the wider community are going to be affected in lots of different ways. People have sort of thought that it was going to be really good for our economy, and it might not actually even be new jobs to be created. Well, I told them personally about how it would affect my family, and in specific Logan, who is at a young age and can't voice these concerns for himself, and I'm his mum and that's my job, so basically that's what I've tried to do.
The planning system is a really fundamental part of any civilization. Everything about the system, protecting health, protecting resources, seems so natural and central to me to living in a good society. The miners' strike, I suppose, was a real eye-opener for me in terms of growing up in South Wales. A teenager suddenly becoming politicised about attack on communities. For what? For political reasons, for economic reasons. I really got involved in university with anti-apartheid politics, which was the real sort of issue of the time, the injustice. And so I got a real close affinity to thinking about those issues of struggle and freedom. I studied planning in university, and from that my first job was in London, which was quite interesting. So I was working for community groups. The Docklands was starting to be developed, which was a really antagonistic project towards the local communities. And along came this, I suppose, Thatcherite project to build what is Canary Wharf. I then moved to Lesotho in South Africa and worked there as a volunteer for nearly 3 years, trying to cope with the community development and around the really rapid growth of cities. I moved to Belfast with a job in Queens. And I've been working there ever since in environmental planning. I've been doing that for over 20 years now at Queen's. The planning system in principle was set up as a way to, I suppose, just protect the environment, and it's got these deep roots with public health. It's recognising that the area, the neighbourhoods, the houses we live in has such an impact on infectious diseases, but now all sorts of non-communicable diseases, obesity and air quality. While it started off as the most important thing should be the protection of people's welfare and for future generations, now the whole thing is driven really by extracting development value. When you get planning permission for something, if it's a greenfield site, it might be worth £1,000 an acre. When it gets planning permission for a house, it might be worth £100,000. And that value is created by the planning permission. And that planning permission is actually given in our name. It's a community right that we've given this person. The problem is that money doesn't go back to the community. it goes to the person who owns the site. And so now we don't build houses because we need houses, we build houses to extract that development value. And that has a real sort of perverse impact on the type of development we see. The message of development, all development being good because it's good for the economy, has just overtaken the planning system. White Harbour was built in 1850, 1860. And so the harbour was built here to extract limestone. The stone would have been taken to Belfast by boat. There was a little village that grew up around it and a brickworks, and it was a thriving little community. And then come 1900, the brickworks died, the quarry died, so the harbour came not used and fell into disrepair a little bit. Now it's a really lovely little quiet corner of the world. Clogan Point Oil Terminal has existed since the late 70s to provide oil to Kilroot Power Station, but was never really used. And it sat there and done nothing, just as oil storage. Recently, there's a proposal by a company to turn it into a very major oil distribution centre. So essentially, it's going to suck in fossil fuels from all over the world and pump it into the veins of Northern Ireland. We're trying to battle with the planning authorities at the minute that this shouldn't happen. It's, you know, there's such a small window of operation because in 10, 20 years we won't be using oil. If we were serious about climate change and transitioning Northern Ireland and the whole economy to something cleaner and better, proposals like this just shouldn't go ahead. I mean, it's a very small local campaign, just mostly through social media. The developer thought it would go through on the nod. They arranged a community meeting where it wasn't publicised, so only 3 people turned up. And then the local council said this isn't major enough to even have an environmental impact statement. So that's where our first campaign started. The local impacts on the climate, the local road infrastructure, the marine environment, the effect of bringing super tankers in from South America, you know, the risks to Belfast Lough. So the developer, they've just produced an environmental statement, and it's clearly they're whitewashing the impacts in that as well. It's deeply rewarding though to get involved with these things. So while it might look like work, it's not, I don't think, because of all the rich things you get from working with people in the environment and communities. It's not part of civic life to get involved in the planning system. So no one awaits, you know, the local borough plan to deliver on the desk as an exciting thing. It's almost a rearguard defensive thing rather than a progressive expression of citizenship. And when you go and talk to people that are opposing a development, they have really good rationalities for it. So the term NIMBY is a really convenient one for developers because it portrays communities and those against, you know, development as deviant in some ways. So we should really do without that term completely, I think. So, you know, so developers are allowed and encouraged to follow their self-interest, but when communities are portraying that, they're portrayed as being deviant and NIMBY, and the whole thing is such a contradiction. We need to demand essentially what the planning system should be there, which is delivering healthy, long-term, sustainable environments for us and our children. And you know, just one example is the Clogan Point development. So we have something that's on many, many grounds insane, more and more fossil fuel infrastructure. So, and we need to just point out the insanity of this and just get involved, do everything we can.
Okay, so the place we're in now at the minute is Portmuck, and this is on Island Magee on the County Antrim coast. Just out past that, stacking around the corner, that's Browns Bay and Larne direction. Further on in the distance would be the County Antrim coast. That's all the way up to Ballycastle there. It's a bit of a chance encounter with a friend who invited me along to discover scuba session. There's something really clicked because once you put the mask on, once you put the air tank on, you put the mouthpiece in, you can breathe, your head doesn't have to be up on the surface, you don't have to keep coming back up, you can stay down, you can get that look at whatever you want to touch or get involved with, and I got hooked straight away. A lot of people would say to me, well, where's the best place you've dived? My answer is always home. It is home. Now, okay, so we don't necessarily have the nice clear blue, crystal clear water, but we certainly have as much life here in our seas as you would have on any coral reef. Became a diving instructor. You know, wildlife tours, letting people see what we've got on our doorstep here, pointing out the beautiful the wild animals that we have here, from the mammals, from the seals, the porpoises on our doorstep here. Port Muck itself here would be Northern Ireland's hotspot for porpoise. We also have dolphins, which would come through occasionally as well. So they'll come right into the bays. Out at sea, we've got the Maiden Islands as well, where the lighthouses are, and that really is a hotspot for seals. If you put your head under the water and just let your eyes become accustomed to that, to the level of the light there, and just look at the seabed, after a minute you will see it starting to move, starting to come alive. But most days if I go diving, I could come up with at least one pocket full of rubbish, of plastic. Major company, Island McGee Energy, was formed to carve out 7 absolutely enormous salt caverns from a mile down under Larne Loch. Caverns is for gas storage, but as we all know at this stage, that's 10 years too late. This whole system is out of date. It's been led by London stock market. There's absolutely nothing eco, there's nothing renewable in it, and they basically just want to fill up with gas, buy it at the right price, wait for the price to go up, and then move it on and make some money out of it. And that's it. These things are huge. It's hard to imagine the size of this. So each of them would be 1 million cubic meters of rock salt that they're going to dissolve to make these caverns. We don't think that that's going to clear. The companies say it's going to just dissolve, it's just going to melt away with the tides. We're saying it won't, because we know that this coastline is riddled just with the very shape and formation of it by little tide currents, right, which form and do not get a steady flow away from it. So all that poison brine is going to be dumped out on the seabed, 450 metres from the shore, and it's millions and millions of tonnes of it. We've got 2 nature reserves on our doorstep here, with 4 ASSIs, which are areas of special scientific interest. I go there quite often with my camera and see what's there. But for these people to come along with this gas storage and they don't care what's going to happen to it, because you know, our generation or the next generation or the generation after that, what are they going to have? Because we do understand that if this business goes ahead, what happens in years to come whenever it's finished with? Who's going to look after it? Who's going to decommission it? What is going to be left behind? Because if this goes wrong, at that point it's too late, because the damage will have started. And for somebody to say, okay, we'll stop this now and we won't do any more, but that damage is already done. So, and how do you put that right? These ecosystems have been here for millennia, for many years, and can be just wiped out and so quickly. So I'm concerned for the environment here. I want people, if you feel strongly enough about something, then please stand up, tell others about it, tell people what's on your mind, what you think is wrong with it, and if you've got an opinion of how you can put it right, don't be shy about putting that forward. Tell it how it is.
No gas caverns! No gas caverns.
No gas caverns.
No gas caverns.
We've come today to show our support to the people here who are campaigning against the gas caverns, and we want to stand with them on the beach and say that we are with you and we think this is an outrage.
No gas caverns.
It's terrible for the wildlife. We don't need gas caverns. There's like plenty of other ways of generating power, as we all know. And also we're in the middle of a climate emergency, and it's absolutely disgusting that gas caverns is even an option, is even on the table.
This area of the North Channel has been used as a dump. We really have to stop and think again.
The way the system works in Northern Ireland is the public have to defend our environment, and we now have a 4-day legal challenge. There are serious deficiencies in the decision-making process, and we have to hold governments to account. And it is a hugely expensive process.
I think it is possible for communities to defeat this kind of thing, and it can be done.
There's a real opportunity now for politicians to take notes, listen to the people, and take climate action.
No gas caverns!
No gas caverns.
No gas caverns!
No gas caverns.
No gas caverns!
No gas caverns!
No
gas caverns! No gas caverns!
We are outside the High Court today in Belfast to judicially review the decision made by Minister Poots to issue marine licences. Now, these marine licences will facilitate the project, and we feel there's poor decision making, that he's taken into account issues that shouldn't have been taken into account and has failed to take into account issues that maybe he should have. And so we're here today just to challenge those decisions. It has been expensive, but we've had a lot of support from big organisations. Obviously, Friends of the Earth, as our co-applicants, have helped. We have Wild Justice, which is Chris Packham's organisation. They donated to our crowd justice. We have the Pills project in Belfast. We have Uplift. We have Law for Change. And also, we are so thankful for the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ordinary people who've donated to our crowdfunders and our crowd justice, who've supported our events for the last few years and have helped us raise the money to make this possible. We're just ordinary people. We're just regular, we're sort of friends and neighbours in Island McGee. We're quite a small community. But we're ordinary people who've been forced to do an extraordinary thing. We feel so passionately against this project for the environmental harm with climate change, and also for the natural harm, the harm to the natural environment as well. So I think people have fed into that they understand we are just ordinary folk doing an extraordinary thing.
1, 2, 3. No gas caverns! No gas caverns! No gas caverns!
No gas caverns. No gas caverns.